Hello and welcome to the Cinema Hounds, the Lorehounds podcast looking at Shakespeare's reimaginings 425 years in the making. I'm David, your guide to the not-so-Danish court of London's Asian community.
And I'm Elysia, Ophelia's would-be therapist, advising her to get to a nunnery for some time off from her toxic ex. And this is our look at Hamlet, especially the new Hamlet releasing in the US and Canadian theaters the same day as this episode, April 10th. We are, by the way, we're talking about a story that, as David said, 425 years old, and most of you have probably read this in high school, so we are not going to give the usual spoiler warnings this time. Sure, there are some differences in setting with the new one, but basically we're talking about Hamlet. So sorry, spoilers on the table.
Open for everything.
Yeah. So David, you and I did like kind of a mini project around deepening in Hamlet. What was your background in Hamlet before Hamnet, I think, was what kicked it off for both of us?
Yeah, exactly. And then I just randomly saw the Dev Patel. Did I say Dev Patel? I meant Riz Ahmed. Sorry, that's
a bait reference.
That's a reference to bait.
He's not tall enough. No, sorry, that's from that show. Sorry.
Who's the other guy? Hamish?
Hamish Patel. Yeah.
Anyway, I saw the trailer for Riz Ahmed's this version that we're going to be talking about somewhere just in my feed, and I was like, "Oh, come on, let's go!" I was super excited, and I think just like any generic upper middle class kid in the United States, exposed to Hamlet pretty regularly, especially through high school. It was sort of a canon thing, and we had a really big theater program at my high school, and we had two amazing teachers. Shout out to Bruce and Barbara, who were just the best. And, we would have different acting troupes come through and this kind of stuff. And, but Hamlet was always sort of thrown in there at some point. And, my parents, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and there's the Ashland Shakespeare Festival every year, every summer. And so we would go down there occasionally on family road trips and stay at, I don't know, so what would pass for an Airbnb these days outside of Ashland, and we would see various plays and stuff like that. So for me, and I've always loved, like, I hear Shakespeare and I see a play or a part of a movie or whatever, and it vibrates with me. I'm like, oh, Shakespeare. And I kind of like would be a wannabe. I'm not even a wannabe Shakespeare, I don't want to say expert, but I always wanted to be a Shakespeare expert. Right. Like, if I could have been
a
in
wannabe.
Yes, I would want to be that. And it's just one of those things where it just never happened. So Hamlet, it's that and Romeo and Juliet. I mean, the two most well known, I guess. They're sort of very high pinnacle in terms of perception and sort of known things. So Hamlet's just been around, right? And I've seen various versions over the years. I can't remember if I've ever actually seen I must have seen a full production of the play. Certainly, yeah. I remember seeing one in Seattle. There was like a local Shakespeare theater company there that did one. So it's just around. It's just something that's been in my life unobserved. I have not observed Hamlet in my life more so than this little mini project that we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, it's one of the big ones. Like it's one of the most famous, obviously, but also it's one of the I think it is the longest.
Really? Okay.
We'll talk a bit more about that. It is today usually divided into 5 acts. We're not going to get that granular. We're going to be talking about a much shorter adaptation. We will talk about a couple more, but Shakespeare himself released 3 different versions. Neither you nor I are experts enough to really differentiate on that kind of level, but just to recap the story overall, this was published around, there's some discrepancy in the date, but around 1600, full title, The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. And the plot goes, set in Denmark, the play depicts the Prince Hamlet and his attempts to exact revenge against his uncle Claudius, who has murdered Hamlet's father in order to seize his throne and marry Hamlet's mother Gertrude. Along the way, Hamlet talks to his father's ghosts, breaks the heart of his sweetheart Ophelia, accidentally kills her father Polonius, engages in a duel with her brother Laertes, and after some exchanges of poison and sword points, everyone ends up dead, and barely seen Fortinbras, prince from Norway, takes the vacant throne. So yeah, this is one that, like, as you said, it's one of the biggest ones, of course. I read about it in high school. You know, I read the play, but it was never one of my personal favorites. I am especially partial to Macbeth, I would say, is like I kind of feel like there's one of these tragedies that you love more than the other. It's like it's like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. And I
don't forget Led Zeppelin in there too. So, you know, but yeah, exactly. It's like, ooh, how do you compare these? It's really hard.
But so I just didn't have the depth of familiarity that I do with, say, A Midsummer Night's Dream or Macbeth, as I said. But since Hamlet's kind of having a moment right now, of course, there was Hamnet, which you and I did a subscriber what you watch in that will be linked in the show notes. And in addition to that, there's this documentary I've talked about a few times in other places, Grand Theft Hamlet, about staging the play inside Grand Theft Auto during the pandemic. There's a recent animated film from Mamoru Hosoda, who I've liked some of his films. Some of his adaptations are just way off. This one, Scarlet, was okay. Anyway, but there's a new National Theater adaptation just released. Also, by the way, has a Southeast Asian lead, but that's not like a focus of it. It's just more colorblind casting. It looks like I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. But yeah, and also just within the past year, there's been an Oscar Isaac documentary about playing Hamlet. Ian McKellen did a version as an old man version of Hamlet. There's a film, Shakespeare in the Park. There's a low budget horror Hamlet. Like, it's just insane, not to mention the Hamlet adjacent films. Now, I know you said you used to love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, but this time it wasn't doing it for you?
Yeah, in my what am I going to watch leading up to this Riz Ahmed version, I was like, oh, I haven't watched that 1990 film in quite some time. Oh, was it a Tom Stoppard play that was turned into a movie with Gary Oldman and Tim Roth. And Richard Dreyfuss is in it, and it's just sort of this really fun, interesting take. It's like Beowulf, but from Grendel's point of view. I think there's a book called Grendel as well, right? There is a book that takes the monster's point of view. I remember reading that once. And, oh, cool. And I remember, so 1990 was a particular time for me. And lots of films. The Seattle International Film Festival was happening. There was a big animated film festival in Seattle at that time too. We had great indie media. We had The Stranger magazine. Dan Savage, well, that's where he got a start. I actually used to know his boyfriend and now husband. We used to work together at the same video store. And so it was just this time when stuff was happening. And so I have these great memories of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, because I remember seeing it at the Guild 45. And I was excited to watch it this time. I couldn't finish. I could barely finish it. It was so slow and ponderous, and it didn't gel for me this time. And I'm really sad, but it was really great to see Oldman and Roth, as young men together in it. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this watching of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, so this is this play or movie that has been on my for shame list forever, because I did watch in 2009. There was this really schlocky vampire movie called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Undead. It was released, and I'm sad to say they have almost nothing in common other than using those characters' names and being very loosely associated with Hamlet.
Right.
yeah, so
well, and
I
that's
watched,
the thing too, is that Hamlet and all parts of it get sort of broken up and distributed culture around. It's like throwing, Hamlet dust around culture, and people just
right.
use it in all kinds of weird ways.
Right. Yeah, exactly. See that Scarlet animated film I talked about.
Right.
But yeah, so I finally watched Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and then I rewatched Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Undead. And I may have slightly preferred the latter, even though it's pretty misogynistic.
Okay.
But it's so stupid, but it's fun. But
Well, sometimes you need that.
I saw multiple people actually comparing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, the one
Stoppard.
that people like, Stoppard, to Waiting for Godot, which is a play that I never really enjoyed, but it's kind of just like always been there. Like I've had to read it, I've had to be in it. It's just always a pop culture touchstone.
Right.
But I feel like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is like a sillier kind of.
That's interesting. That's an interesting comparison. I like that.
But then does that mean that Hamlet is God?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 like that, though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interestingly, no Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, a new adaptation. We'll talk about what they left out. But yeah, I went through.
Right. They're in this movie that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, they often seem to leave them out for some reason, even though they've become especially cult favorites because of that film. But yeah, there's other like Hamlet adjacent films, as you said, sprinkled throughout culture. There is one from Ophelia's perspective called Ophelia from 2018, starring Daisy Ridley as, you'll never guess, Ophelia. And Naomi Watts plays the queen, and she also plays, spoiler coming for an 8-year-old film, press forward once if you don't want to hear it. She plays a woods witch who is secretly the twin sister of the queen. Like she's just really a medicine woman. That's who everyone's getting the poisons from. But she is actually the twin sister of the queen. And that just made me think of Hamlet again.
Right. Yeah. I can.
That whole connection, which by the way, this came out before that. So I don't know if she was inspired by that at all, or it made her think about like, oh, there is a lot of these, this knowledge of medicines in the book.
Right. Did you catch this one, Ophelia?
Yes. I watched it. I enjoyed it. Like it's poo-pooed a lot, but I quite liked it. I'll talk about it. Yeah.
It's hanging at like a 3.2 on Letterboxd. I'm looking at the page right now. It's, that's fine.
Yeah, it's respectable ratings, but I gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Question. Since we talked about Hamlet before, what do you think about the theory that Hamlet, the play we're talking about today, that was inspired by the death of Shakespeare's son, Hamlet, now that we've delved further into the plot? It's
tough. When I was doing my watch, and we'll talk about all the ones that we watched in a minute, I guess, I was looking for that thread, that Hamnet thread in the different productions. And it was harder to find that through line than I expected it would be. And the Hamnet movie and where we resolve to at the end of that is such an interesting interpretation. And now I know that the author of the book that the movie was based on did extensive research into the storyline and how it worked. And so I was trying to sort of think, and I think they talk about that in that podcast that you had, that you suggested I listened to.
Right. Not just the Tudors, when they interviewed the author of Hamlet.
Right. And then I forget, then they interviewed a Shakespeare expert or somebody who's very conversant.
Right. He works at the Globe.
Right. And so I think that's what I've kind of come away from, not only with this Riz Ahmed interpretation and the Brana and the Zeffirelli, and those are the ones that I watch, and then obviously Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It's cliche. It's kind of a cliche thing to say, but it's a crystal. It's a prism, right? And every time we change the angle of what we look at, we get different viewpoints and different colors, and see things differently. And so I think, it's such a deeply layered story and we'll talk about Fortinbras and Laertes and Hamlet and different interpretations that it's what's the way I want to say this? I'm really trying to find. It was very hard for me to find the Hamnet through line because the play itself is so layered. And I don't know where that interpretation came from, even though that I know that the book author did extensive research into this and really keyed in on that. And so I almost have to go back to maybe watch Hamnet again and go back to listening to that podcast again to see what I can pick up.
I mean, I feel like I should read her book to really get it more. But I mean, I see Hamlet is a story about grief. For certain, it is that.
That's one part. Yeah, that's one element. Yeah.
But it is also, Shakespeare in general, he would base pretty much all of his stories on older stories. So in this case, most especially the Scandinavian story of Hamlet, which you can see a more direct telling of in The Northman, the 2022 film with Alexander Skarsgård.
That's interesting. I think I was so overwhelmed by The Northman in terms of its brutality and violence and gore that I didn't really pick up on the Hamlet storyline necessarily, or the elements, the seed kernels for the story. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and then it echoes forward into like The Lion King is famously a sort of telling of Hamlet. I have enjoyed, I'll talk in a minute about one that Kenneth Branagh did, and I already talked about Grand Theft Hamlet, but I know you also had an adaptation you like there's a whole like subgenre of stories that are about adapting Hamlet.
It goes into the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead kind of thing as well, where let's take apart and examine from all these different directions. So that's funny. But yeah, there's a podcast, a radio show and now podcast that I think a lot of people are familiar with. It's called This American Life. It's just a little podcast, it's a small thing. And, I don't remember what year this one was, but it's the episode is entitled Act 5. I think we might put a link in the show notes for it.
Yes.
And it's This American Life oftentimes will break up their episodes with different storylines. This is one of those mono stories where the whole episode is about one story. And this is about a production of Hamlet that takes place in a prison through a program where professional theater people were working in a prison as part of activity and rehabilitation and all this kind of stuff. And I remembered it sort of midway through our little mini project. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I queued it up and listened to it. And man, I think of all of the things that we've watched for this, at least that I watched for this, that podcast is my favorite piece of media about the making of Hamlet in the subgenre of the making ofs, or weird tangential angles to it. It really is profound and insightful in ways that I also found the Riz Ahmed version that we're going to be talking about here in a minute is super fascinating in terms of taking a different point of view or examining different aspects that are non-traditional, non-canonical interpretations or presentations of it. And so, yeah, I would, of all of the secondary pieces, I would put this as my number one thing to suggest to people, go check this podcast out. Because one of the fun things that they do is they have rather than having a single actor playing a Hamlet, the Hamlet role, they have a gang of Hamlets. They have like 5 Hamlets, and they sort of all move as a group of 5 people, and they rotate in and out their lines. It's really interesting because they want to give people an opportunity to play because they can only do so many performances, and their performances are strictly controlled. But then, the the podcast, the story host, he's interviewing the prisoners and they talk about their real world interpretations of things. And it's an incredible look at examining Hamlet and the tragedy of Hamlet and the violence of Hamlet and the violence that's being done in and around this family, from a very, very modern and real world look at it. So top notch interpretation or secondary interpretation.
Right. Mine much more frivolous than that. My favorite of that specific subgenre is probably the one that Kenneth Branagh released in 1995 while he was preparing his own massive cinematic Hamlet production. He released this tiny black and white indie movie called In the Bleak Midwinter.
I never heard of it. That's interesting.
Oh, and it has a different name sometimes, and now I'm forgetting what it is. Something with winter in it as well. Okay. But yeah, it's about a community theater in the lead up to Christmas staging their interpretation of Hamlet in an old church, and it is so like idiosyncratic and charming and quirky. And the humor for the mid-90s has aged surprisingly well. So I really liked In the Bleak Midwinter by Kenneth Branagh.
I just went to the Letterboxd page and your review popped up because I follow you and I love your opening sentence of your review. Kenneth Branagh channels his inner Jim Jarmusch, but with more 90s style bumbling charm. That's I'm like, wow, that's a world. You brought me into a world of this interpretation. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of like coffee and cigarettes at times,
100%, yeah. And oh god, who is it? I'm thinking like, who's the poet? Oh, anyway, I'm music. I'm just falling into a world. Moving on.
So let's talk about Branagh's and the others classic, quote unquote, faithful adaptations. Is apparently there's more than 50 film adaptations that are like straight up supposed to be faithful,
right?
Although we'll discuss more or less. But yeah, obviously we weren't going to do that between us. We recently watched, you watched at least part of the Laurence Olivier one from 1948. This was the one, and I watched that one. This is the one that won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. It was the first non-Hollywood movie to win a Best Picture Oscar, and Hollywood had a temper tantrum and a meltdown after that. They're like, Hollywood is over. The Brits have taken over. And then somebody, some calmer minds were like, everybody chill out. It's okay.
And now we're even from this year's Oscars, right? We're sort of breaking down that barrier as well. So
yeah. You watched also the Franco Zeffirelli version from 1990 with Mel Gibson as Hamlet. That's the one I watched growing up, but I have not seen it since. So I'm glad you saw it. We both watched the Kenneth Branagh one from 1996, which this one includes the entirety of the play, all like 4 hours and 10 minutes of it. I think it's the only film adaptation that keeps the whole thing. I think you watched a bit of the Gregory Dornan one from 2009 with David Tennant. I've not seen that one at all.
Right. And I believe is it the Royal Shakespeare?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I watched a pro shot of a stage play from 2018 directed by Rodi Hugh and Robert Icke with starring Andrew Scott as Hamlet. My question for you is, of the ones you've seen, how would you rank them, including the new one?
Oof. Ooh, well, that's hard because the new one, I almost don't, how do you compare this new one to these? I mean,
Laurence Olivier cut a lot too, and I suppose I've seen like the 2018 one is also set in the modern day.
Right. But so this is going to be something we'll talk about after we do our break and we get into the movie proper. There is dressing it up in, putting on, we're going to wear suits and ties instead of, capes and swords, right? There's that. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to put it in I think there was one that was a play that was once put on a empty floor in an office high rise, and it was a sort of vaguely sort of corporate thing or something. Whatever, you do that, And then you do something that like Ahmed's done, where they've taken it apart from the Lego building block stage. So I almost have a hard time thinking of how to compare.
Okay. How about the others then?
The others is interesting. Like you said, I didn't finish Olivier's 48, but it was one of the most interesting. And the reason I didn't finish it was just sort of a time and busy life, thing, and other stuff to watch, mall, and a few other things. But it was fascinating, visually, just incredible. I can't believe the quality of the cinematography from 1948. It blew me away. The use of the staging, the way that the visual storytelling represents Hamlet's inner life in terms of all of these mazes and tunnels and looking through, and people very far off, looking, framed within a frame within a frame, and stairwells going off at weird angles and such. It was just beautiful and so impressive.
Do you know Olivier is the only actor to have anyone to have ever won an acting award for playing a, character speaking Shakespearean tongue?
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I had to process that for a minute. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. And then they did a bunch of it where it were voiceovers. Like his monologues weren't spoken. They were voiced out, and so he was just face acting for the playback. I mean, come on. It's just an incredible production. And anybody who's interested in sort of all of these Shakespeare things, I definitely would say go see the 48 one. The 1990 Franco Zeffirelli, and I lead with Zeffirelli and not Gibson because this is not Gibson's movie. He's the lead actor. It's Zeffirelli's interpretation, and Zeffirelli is known for doing some of these. Obviously, Romeo and Juliet with what's his name and what's her name, right? They were that was a famous movie too. That one was a great adaptation for cinema. So it follows the same beats. We don't drop that many. We drop Fortinbras, but Fortinbras always gets dropped, except for Brana. And from a cinematic adaptation, I thought Zeffirelli did a really, really good job. And I thought Mel Gibson did a really, really good job because he plays that sort of just crazy vibrating Hamlet that's, angsty and angry and twisted and playing crazy, a sane person playing a crazy person. That's Mel Gibson's, stock and trade acting bits, right? So I really enjoyed the Zeffirelli. It holds up well. Glenn Close is great in it. And who played Ophelia? What's her name? Helena Bonham Carter playing Ophelia. So just really, really good. The Kenneth Branagh, I loved it up until the end. The ending was just like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? That was just the most ridiculous sort of the pinnacle of the action was just
the jousting suits had nipples on them.
yeah totally
but
weird.
It was visually spectacular.
The set was gorgeous. The use of the mirrors, the camera work, that they could flow all of the different one shots that they had in there, the grounds, the costuming, and it really. Say what you want about Branagh, he knows what he's doing when it comes to bringing Shakespeare to life and bringing these characters to life and giving these words meaning. And I love the fact that it keeps the Fortinbras storyline, which is a kind of an important aspect. One of the how many different Hamlets are there? As many as you want to interpret. But if we want to go back to the original source text, there is a key storyline, key element of the storyline, which is comparing Laertes, Hamlet, and Fortinbras as three fatherless men who are all reacting to the world with their different temperaments and their different emotional states. And obviously, Hamlet even has that play or that that whole little soliloquy.
The play within a plea?
No, it's not a soliloquy because it's not by himself, but I believe he's talking to...
The speech? Which one?
Yeah, no, I can't remember is he talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, or is he talking to...
Which speech?
It's the one about the quintessence of man, the sort of, the flaw of man. Like you have this little flaw. My brain is awash with so many things right now. I'm having a hard time remembering everything. But there's this idea that, you have a fault as a person. And what that fault is, who knows? It's up to you, right? It's your past. But then that sort of is this driver within you. It's this key component in your psychology and how you act in the world. And so there's this great comparison of looking at Laertes, Hamlet, and Fortinbras as three men without fathers and how they interact with the world. Laertes is angry and rash to action. Hamlet is indecisive and moody. And Fortinbras is clear and, he's martial, right? He's a military guy and he's clear of purpose and maneuvers everything. And Laertes and Fortinbras act as these... what you want to say, like a spectrum between.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because I think Fortinbras, I see the Hamlet and Laertes as sort of mirrors in a way of each other,
right.
But Fortinbras is such a projection because we see so little of him. We only see him at the very beginning and the end, and hear about his movements throughout. But at the end, it just feels to me like he just kind of lucks into it because everybody else is dead.
But that's the weird thing is that he kind of lucks into it, but they invaded, right? And I think that's what Branagh's interpretation gave me that I'd never seen before, because I don't think I've ever seen the full thing.
Right. Visually it's spectacular. You see like the armies and
Yeah. And you get for most stage productions, they
of course you can't do that.
Yeah, well, even with the armies, but even just that Fortinbras shows up and takes over. And so I was like, oh, and so I really appreciate Branagh's interpretation. I also like the interpretation that the relationship between Ophelia and Hamlet was much more involved than it was in a lot of places. Yeah, they were actually having relationships. Like that's a great interpretation. And that helps me understand the poison that Hamlet uses to mess with Ophelia, why it's even more important, not the literal poison, but the emotional poison that he does to her. That makes it more sense to me in a way, like why that would be very much more emotionally impactful. That it's not just like, oh, I wrote you some nice letters, but no, we were in a full-on impassionate, very personal relationship, let's say. So I enjoyed the hell out of the Brana, except for the flying sword thing. That was just nuts.
But the Tenant one, you said you didn't.
I checked out.
Yeah, it wasn't doing it for you. I've never tried that one, so I don't know.
John
it has
says,
good reviews. Yeah,
it does. And I think maybe I was Hamleted out by the time I got to it.
What does
after
John
watching
say?
Brana. John says it's his favorite because it's David Tennant. So
sure,
fair. I can't knock him for that. But when I started watching it, it was just like, oh, okay, we're just dressing up the same play again, right? It's not a cinematic interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I felt by the time I got there, like I had sort of filled my Hamlet well was pretty full at that point, and anything else that I was going to watch was just going to spill over and be wasted. So. Sure. But you watched the Andrew Scott one.
Yeah. Well, so just starting with the Brana one that you were talking about.
Yeah, sorry.
That's the one that I thought was gobsmackingly gorgeous.
Yeah.
But it was not, of these prior adaptations, it was my least favorite of the three that I watched just now.
Okay.
I mean, I still gave it 3.5 stars, especially for how beautiful it was. And I think it was good. They did the full 4 hours. And obviously there's a lot of interesting visual stuff going on screen. I think I just didn't really hook into the acting. And I don't want to be the person who's like, well, I prefer all the British adaptations, but I did prefer the British adaptations I watched. I don't know. It was just like it felt more like in this film, like they were reciting the lines. And I would say, particularly Kenneth Branagh. And I am a defender of his Frankenstein adaptation, which is one of my favorite Frankenstein adaptations, even though that's far less faithful. Also, Helena Bonham Carter. I didn't really realize. Oh, wait, no, that was in the other one. Sorry.
That's in the Zeffirelli.
Yeah. But yeah, I just, he got like a little too manic, or his interpretation wasn't connecting with me as much as I watched after that the Laurence Olivier one. I was like, yes, this is the stuff. But of course, that one is just over 2 hours, I think, and it cuts a lot. It cuts, as we talked about, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It cuts Fortinbras. Yeah, it cuts a lot. But the acting for that one, oh my goodness. The cinematography, as you said, the editing, just operating at a level that's at least decades ahead of its time. Always, I really got sucked into that one. The only one that I liked even more than that is the 2018 Andrew Scott one.
You liked that one? Okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite still.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'll say it is the first I watched out of this project. And it's an hour shorter than the Kenneth Branagh one, but I can't really tell you what they cut because they do keep Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They do keep Fortinbras. They do keep all of the things that often do get cut. But it made all of these characters feel the most human to me. And sure, it is, they use a Shakespearean language, but they said it in the modern day. You can find it on YouTube, by the way. But someone was saying about Andrew Scott that when he delivered his lines as if he had just come up with them on the spot in a positive way. And that's, yeah, indeed. It's just sort of like as if you're just responding to someone. And, some of the choices they made in staging and casting, and the delivery, and of course this goes back to the directors again, just helped me understand the content of the play on a level that nothing else has. So I think, that's definitely still my favorite.
That's a strong recommendation. I think I might have to reconsider that one. I didn't consider that one. I don't know why.
Too much.
Maybe, but maybe I should have put that one in instead of the Tenant one. So, okay. That's good to know. I will take that under recommendation. I will say the one thing, just to add, just to put a little backspin on the Branagh one, I'm glad it's out there because we need that full textual representation. Like it's a baseline. Besides the ending being done, the sort of final action being done, the stunt casting, I just remembered I was thinking about it when you were talking. The stunt casting that they did in there actually took me out of it in a couple of places. And there were a few of those more well-known actors that were in there. I don't need to name any names.
And then they wasted Robin Williams.
Yeah. And, and some of it worked and some of it didn't. And I think, your mileage may vary depending on who you are. The one that didn't work for me was, Depardieu I don't think was great, but Jack Lemmon was the one that really threw me out of it. Yeah. But weirdly, the one that worked the best for me was Charlton Heston. So I don't know. I don't know how to interpret any of that. So. Cool. Well, I'm going to have to put the Scott one on my to watch someday list, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well, shall we take a quick break and then come back and talk about the new movie?
Sounds like a plan. And we're back. And we're going to start talking about is it Karia is the director? Aneil Karia?
I guess so.
Yeah, we're going to talk about. Are we supposed to call it the Riz Ahmed, or are we supposed to call it?
I
by
mean,
the
we should
director?
call the director's name, but starring Riz Ahmed.
Yeah. And is it 25 or 26? I don't know.
It was released.
Confused.
So it was in development hell for years, and then it premiered at the Telluride Film Festival in August of 2025, and then was released, but then wasn't released in theaters until February 6th of this year in the UK, and now in the US and Canada, April 10th.
Okay, so I think the wide release date is what typically we use as the reference year for a movie.
I mean, usually officially it's where it first played. So it'll often be, that's why indie movies often have a release year of a year before you're seeing them in the theater.
Okay, got it. Right. So this is technically Hamlet 2025.
Technically, yeah.
Technically.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
but
yeah,
releasing
a lot
in
of places.
theaters now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, whatever. Okay, fair enough.
And this one we do have to credit a screenwriter, because we'll talk about there are some significant changes, although they do a good job blending it. Yeah. So Michael Leslie was a screenwriter. Cinematography we'll also bring up by Stuart Bentley. You may recognize that name from some other things. And then the twist on this one is, haunted by his father's ghost, Prince Hamlet descends from elite London society into the city's underground, moving between Hindu temples and homeless camps in seeking to avenge his father's murder. He begins to question his own role in his family's corruption. And this version has so far, we only have the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes because it's just releasing. So 82% from critics who summarize, fueled by Riz Ahmed's electrifying turn, this gritty, streamlined Hamlet boldly reimagines the classic tragedy with ferocious emotion and intent. So what did you think of it overall?
I like that a ferocious emotion. That works for me as a two-word descriptor. Thank you again for arranging for us to be able to catch it a little ahead of time. I really wish I had gotten the opportunity to watch it a couple more times, because my first watch, I was fighting with my brain to stop tracking the differences and to stop interpreting, because I've seen Hamlet enough times, both in the past and just recently. My neurons were waiting for, for this to happen and for this scene to happen. And I was waiting for the progression as I've known it to occur and unfold. And when that didn't happen, my brain would go, hey, wait, this is different.
Right.
And so a good chunk of my processing was just fighting with myself. And I just was like, okay, that's just what's going to happen. That's fine. I'll have an opportunity to watch it again. And obviously I didn't. But that said, this movie is still sitting with me. What is it? 1, 2, 3 days after seeing it. It's still like I still have a sense memory of the movie, and my body is still processing what I saw. And for the cinematic adaptations that I have seen, and by no means have I seen that many, to me, this is the boldest version that I would assert that anyone has done. It is the most, they really go to work and they go right to the center of the story. They take everything apart. They spread the Lego pieces all out on the floor. They throw out the instruction manual that Lego provides you, and they build their own interpretation of Hamlet based on a point of view and an interpretation that they wanted to do. And a lot of times our interpretations are about Hamlet's psychology, indecision, action, the state of being, shitty shit that we do to people that are close to us, these ideas of heaven and hell and your immortal soul, and who's like, there's a great that whole great thing where Hamlet is thinking about killing the king while the king is in prayer, right at an altar. And he's like, well, shit, if I kill him now, he's going to automatically go to heaven, right? There's all these ideas of salvation embedded in there. But this one is like...
I mean, but there is like, it's interesting how they did. I might as well bring it up now, but I was going to bring it up later is that thing where, so he kills Polonius. And he drags him out. And in this version, so instead of that whole church confrontation, you're saying, in this version, he drags Polonius's body into a temple because he's just trying to hide it, because in this world set in the modern day, there are consequences when you kill people, even if you're quote unquote a prince. But then when he's sitting there with the body, he looks around and realizes he's in a temple. And I took that to be the moment that does that same thing with just questioning. And then, so it actually kind of helped me understand that aspect of the play better, what the purpose of it is. And
this is what I really love about this version of the play, of the story. Let's call it the story. That they take things apart and put them out of order, that in a way, in the expected order. And so we do get exactly what you're talking about. Oh, I didn't think about it this way. I see a new line in here that I never considered before. This idea that, Hamlet is the scion of this very rich and powerful family, but what effect is that family having? What effect is this royalty having? Corporate royalty or monarchical royalty, God-given royalty? But what's the effect on people around, the communities and society around this? That part of what Hamlet is struggling with is his divine, or his, that he's going to inherit all of this stuff. And what does that mean to him? It's just so fascinating. So I really appreciate the work that they did in the screenplay. I did try to find how much of the script that we see in the movie was original versus the original Shakespearean text.
Yeah.
And there are some fillers. There's some little bridge gaps that they put in there to make. But
they blend it so well. Like sometimes it's, and I'm going to admit my ignorance up front. I'm not, at some points they're speaking other languages, might be multiple other languages. In my mind, I'm like, I know Riz Ahmed has a Pakistani British background. I'm guessing Urdu. Do not know Southeast Asian languages enough to know if that's the case. So if I refer to the wrong language, apologies.
You can add us. What are we, Cinema Hounds at the Lorehounds? Is that our email?
Is it?
Link
Did
in the
we
show
set
notes.
up one? Yeah. I think it's still Lorehounds at the Lorehounds. We should.
Okay, all right. Well, you can add us. Blue Sky, email, whatever you want to do.
No. Please educate us. We would love to be educated more, and that's one reason I think why we love that Riz Ahmed will obviously bring up another project recent project of his recently that also wants to. Yeah, exactly. And that's another one, because there, at least when I watch Bait, I have the subtitles that tell me like, okay, this is in Urdu, this is in Hindi, this is in, the blend. The blend of languages. And here they're blending that. So in a way that feels natural with Shakespearean text. And they're editing some of the text because I know the differences, but then the other times it's like, well, what do I miss? Because I do not have this play memorized. I'm not going to pretend that I do.
Not going to lie. So I think, to sum up, is that this is a real adaptation. This is an adaptation. And it has a point of view. It makes a stand on that point of view. And it says, this is what our interpretation at this time, in this place, with these actors, with these directors, with these writers, this is the aspect of the story that we're telling. I read some reviews here or there, and people were like, "Oh, I didn't like it because it's modern language, or it's Shakespearean language and modern setting. Why didn't they just?" I'm like, okay, whatever. Get into the story and go with it. And then, if you don't like that, there's a social justice message in there. If you don't like there's a critique of capitalism in there. If you don't like that, there's a critique of hereditary, wealth, and if you don't like all kinds of things, that's fine. But that's where they're standing with this film. And I respect the shit out of that, that they made an adaptation that is interesting and fresh and bold. And I have some critiques of it. We'll talk about it later. But I think I was like, thank God that they didn't just dress up the same play and deliver it in the same order. I have been waiting for this interpretation. In every interpretation of Hamlet I've ever seen, they always just run the same play and they just put him in a suit and a tie, or they put him in weird space age bubble, costumes, whatever. But they never break the play. That they broke the play down and reconstructed it, I have nothing but praise.
Yeah.
Because I think they do a credible job. You can disagree with their job, with their interpretation, that's fine. But the work that they did is unassailable, I think.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, this is definitely, the Andrew Scott one, it does look at things from new angles, but it does keep the text pretty intact. And this one, indeed, it makes it more about the titular character, Hamlet. I'm trying to think if we ever even leave his perspective during the entire thing.
That's a good question.
Because in the play, we open from someone else's perspective, a scene Hamlet's not even in. But here, we open immediately with what Hamlet would be doing during that scene, which is, honoring his father's body, preparing it for.
That was so beautiful. And it's something that we'd never seen before. We get that connects us to Hamlet's grief.
Right.
In a way that I'd never been connected to his grief before. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I mean, and so because the core of this play, as we said, it is a play about grief in defense of the Hamlet theory, and it's immediately, and credit to the writing and directing, and obviously to Riz Ahmed's performance as well. The Hamlet's heartbreak at his father's death is really truly palpable in the opening here. And that is what we need to buy into. Now, I'll question later whether I bought into it at certain key moments. But when it opens, we are grounded in that this is the state of grief of this central character that's going to drive everything after this. And then it closes at the end. Fortinbras is mentioned in this, but I think we only get like flashes of newspaper articles or something. But at the end,
Fortinbras is a movement, not a person,
right? Yeah, and there is a person at the head of it, but but I don't know that they were named Fortinbras. No, But then,
they embodied Fortinbras.
We don't see somebody, we don't need to see Fortinbras stepping onto the throne. Instead, it's always Hamlet's perspective. So it closes with Hamlet dying against a tree. So very just Hamlet centered all the way through. And it's, it's interesting.
That's a really interesting point. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's really interesting. I hadn't considered that we do never leave his point of view. Where in the play, we're all over the place. Yeah. Appropriately, right?
Yeah. And so that's also a lot of these side conversations are cut out. And there's a lot more silence in this film than you would ever get. Like there's 5 minutes past, I counted, I looked at the clock, I was curious, before the first piece of dialogue is exchanged. And the first piece of dialogue isn't even in English, and we don't even get subtitles. We didn't have subtitles with our screener. And then it's just throughout, there's sequences of silent observation where it's just Hamlet taking in what's happening around him. So you have those moments away from the constant rat-a-tat-tat of the Shakespearean English, which is, I think, what kind of wore me down with the Brana one.
Yeah. I watched the Brana one in 4 sittings.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But here, instead of like listening in on another conversation, you see Hamlet observing the fact that the bed his father was laid out in, the bedding's been laundered now. And that's a kind of erasure of his father. And you're given the breath and the space to contemplate that. And he sees the play being practiced out the window. And
the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have a wedding ceremony, which is then folded in with the play, like brilliant interpretations.
Yeah. And it's these extra moments of quiet observation that really ground it in the modern era, I would say.
Or going over to Ophelia's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, is Ophelia Laertes or Ophelia? I was like confused. Or no, sorry, not Laertes. What's his buddy's name?
Horatio?
Horatio, thank you. Is Ophelia Horatio? And then Laertes is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern as well as Laertes?
Yeah.
Like, wow, the way that they collapsed these elements was just so insightful because they stacked the characteristics along with the plot device purpose of that character in a way that just made sense.
Yeah.
And compressed the storyline, but didn't compress it and degrade it. Right. In photography, we talk about lossy versus lossless, right? Lossy, you throw out pixels because these two reds are really close to each other. So we'll just call it one red and we'll throw out the rest of them, as opposed to keeping every color in every pixel. But that makes a huger file size. So they were just, the compression ratio of the information into these characters was just brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it was, as we said, the Brunner one, like 4 hours and 10 minutes. That's the full play. This is only an hour and 51 minutes. And it has these moments of silence that it allows time for. So that means a lot got cut. A lot of the iconic speeches. There's no Yorick to alas.
Right.
We talked about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is gone. There, I see the most common gripe I see with this film from people is that through watching these prior adaptations, especially the Olivier one and most especially the Andrew Scott one, I appreciate really the humorous elements of Hamlet. Mm-hmm. And they were stripped away here. This is not a humorous film. This plays out more like a thriller, especially as it gets toward the end.
That's a really good observation. I hadn't thought about that. The like with Polonius, be not a beggar or lender, that mm-hmm. whole thing. The brevity and wit, and of course he's not being brief. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and would you play me like a flute? All of those things that make it funny are stripped out of this. But I think when you go back to the play, those are playing to the audience stuff, right? He's looking at the audience and having fun, and we're gonna like turn these pompous assholes upside down, and we can all laugh at them. And so that helps leaven the heaviness of the storyline, the original storyline. Mm-hmm. And in this, I think you're absolutely right. This is like a thriller. Like mm-hmm. if you approach it as a thriller, dark crime thriller, grimdark, it's a grimdark thing. There's no hope punk here.
No, that's true.
If I had known that, I think I would have approached it even again a little bit differently, because I was, again, my mental map for the movie was expecting those humorous points, but they're gone. And so I was, I think, struggling with that a little bit as well.
Yeah.
No, I like that interpretation a lot.
But yeah, I mean, it's a surprisingly small cast. So like it is
small and large at the same time.
Yeah. I mean,
because the background acting is huge.
Right. I mean, it's a more intimate adaptation overall. And I would say it's one that like, it's not interested in fan service. Like, it's like, I'm sorry, you want me to say I knew poor Yorick well. I'm not going to, because that's not the point of this one. I want to do other things instead. It obviously wants to take something new from this tale that the makers of this film know that we all have heard this tale 1,000 times, right, or at least have had the opportunity to, whether or not we've taken advantage of it.
And they know their stuff.
Yeah.
You can't put this back together again if you don't know what the play is. You can't say something new unless you have digested digested it previously.
Yeah. But so without, we don't have Horatio, Marcellus, Bernardo, all these other characters. We don't, as I said, have these other perspectives. It's, I call this a thriller, but is the theme of spying as prevalent? That part seems taken out.
Yeah, no, it's more of a mob boss crime syndicate thing, right? Because we cut the actual army that's, Fortinbras's army moving across into Poland, from Norway. So there's no observation. There's no, what are we building, an army thing. which I thought The Tenant did pretty good because I saw part of that. That one covers some of that. And then the whole thing of sending him to England, which has changed into Delhi, but that's where it's really crime syndicate. They just take him to the empty lot and they're going to whack him, right? So there's no intrigue. It's just mobster, straight mobster stuff. So, I don't know if that answers your question about the spying. I was trying to think of where the spying.
No, it's not. Yeah, you might have thought. I just at the end of the day, it's
or
like
Hamlet spying on people.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like at the end of the day, like I was saying about Frankenstein adaptations, is everyone, as something's so often adapted, everyone should bring something new to the table, and not everyone is interested in the same themes.
Right.
And this really drills down on the themes it's interested in.
100%.
Which I guess maybe we should talk about more after a break.
Sounds good. We'll be right back. And we're back. So let's talk a little bit about modern day London.
Mm-hmm. How did this setting in the Southeast Asian community, how did that work for you for this play?
I thought it was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I thought it was an interesting look. It's my reactions are intermingled because we just watched Bait, my wife and I. Well, yeah, I mostly watched it. My wife was like, she wasn't as into it as me. And then I think I binged the last 4. And so it's just kind of a blob in my brain. And so I'm now mixing like Brick Lane with, what part of London were we in with well,
Hamlet. I mean, they are both thoroughly grounded in London.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the Bait. Yeah. So Bait is a 6 episode limited series. Episodes are quite short, actually. Yeah. It's only like 3 hours in total then, less. And that one is especially, I finished it up today just before we recorded, and I watched the Brick Lane one. And it was funny, like, when they came out of the basement of that restaurant onto the street, I was like, hey, I know where this is. And then on the screen, it goes Brick Lane. This one, I guess, goes less out and about in the city, probably had a lower budget. Interestingly, same mother, both Bait and Hamlet have Sheba Chowda playing Gertrude in Hamlet, and then also plays mother in Bait. Yeah.
I really I really enjoyed seeing her on screen so closely again. I thought she was really fantastic. But I thought the idea of setting this in this sort of, how are you going to have an inherited, claim to a crown in a modern age, but for I don't want to say it's not insular, but it's it's a community that has culture and tradition and historicity around it with its own ways and mores, but it's modern, but yet it holds a center to itself. And this idea that this son of this corporate head of this family, it just made sense. And it made sense visually. It made, and that, I think part of the storyline of Bates is breaking cultural stereotypes. And so to take Hamlet and move it around, I think is really smart. I know Star Trek famously, pulls some Shakespeare into it in the Undiscovered Country movie. So I thought it was, I'm just really glad that Riz Ahmed had the muscle to be able to make this happen. And I think it gives a license to other people to take what is universal in Shakespeare and apply it to culture and time, and to recenter it for yourself. Because if we do drill down into some common human elements, how can we examine and explore those from different cultural lenses? I think I hope he gives license for that. I hope that this movie gives other non European centered or non Hollywood centered producers, actors, directors the license to go, hey, let's start breaking stuff apart and let's start reinterpreting?
So you love your scales and or your metrics. I'll just say I learned about a new metric when I was doing background for this show. And this was invented in 2018 by Sadia Habib and Shaf Chowdhury, who were two researchers in the UK who were inspired by Riz Ahmed to determine a method to quantify the nature of Muslim representation in film and TV. So this is sort of like the Bechdel test, but like, is it responsible Muslim representation?
I love this. This is great.
So I'll read the list, and I ask you to question yourself. How well do you think it's done? These check off in Hamlet and in Bait. Okay. And it's interesting to think that Hamlet, I think actually, I'll say in advance, I think Hamlet does more poorly on this, even though it was written to be, a white guy. Right. But those don't translate well.
I know that we didn't intend this to be a Bait Hamlet, sort of connected.
How can we not?
But you really can. And I would encourage everyone to check out Bait because
we're not going to spoil it. Yeah.
No, we're not going to spoil it. But it is going to be it's going to be hard to knock it out of my top 10. Mm-hmm. It's a strong contender for right up there with Wonder Man.
Mm-hmm. And it is, we should say, it is about Riz Ahmed is in Bait. He is auditioning to play James Bond. And
that's the stated premise of the show. So don't freak out at us.
No, that's where it begins.
Yes.
And then so it follows that and it gets surreal and a lot of
great. Oh, I love it.
You brought up in addition to Wonder Man, you brought up Atlanta. I'm like, there's definitely that element in it. So
the studio a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, surreal, Hollywood referential. Anyway. But so keeping those two in mind.
And just to say, because these are both coming out at the same time, that's also sort of like this weird little thing. And I didn't know about Bait until I heard an interview with Riz Ahmed talking about Hamlet. And then they bring it up. And I was like, that's how I caught on to it like a couple of days before it released. And so, it's timing. So I think they're working synergistically. Yeah. And then I think it gives us this opportunity to look at Riz Ahmed a little bit as well. Yeah. Right? Through these two, because they're both substantial productions. These are not minor shows or movies. Yeah. These are really significant pieces of work.
Yeah. So, I'm sure there's no accident that they held the Hamlet release for right now.
Yeah. Fair.
So the Riz test, if you keep in mind for both of these, here's the checklist. If a character is identifiably Muslim, is the character talking about the victim of or the perpetrator of terrorism? Is the character presented as irrationally angry? Like Hamlet? Hell yeah. Yeah. Actually, I would say Bait also deals a bit with madness. But anyway.
Totally.
Is the character presented as superstitious, culturally backward, or anti-modern? No to those. Mm-hmm. Not to the, at least, culturally backward, anti-modern. Presented as a threat to a Western way of life. Like, no, definitely not. But definitely presented in both cases, or especially in Bait, where they can call it out as other people seeing him as a threat and acting on it. If the character is male, is he presented as misogynistic? No. If female, presented as oppressed by her male counterparts? Also no.
Interesting. I like this. Is it actually called the Riz test?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Invented by those two researchers.
I love it. Mm-hmm. I think it's great. I love frameworks. I love the Bechdel test and this now Riz test. This is cool.
Yeah.
All right. I have to keep that one auxiliary because it's not often that we deal with Muslim storytelling.
But it can be on the list because we don't always talk about adaptations, but the adaptation metrics are on there. But for me, I think something that helped me with the framing of at least what Riz Ahmed wanted to get out of this interpretation is this 9-minute documentary that was just released called The Name of Action. I think it was released to coincide with the UK release of the film. And so it was commissioned by WeTransfer, but it's
that's kind of pretty weird.
Yeah, it's a decent doc. It's actually an extremely well edited doc. Shout out to the editor, Jack Williams. But you can find it on the Prodco site. That's the production company, literally called Prodco. I'll put that link in the show notes. But what the summary of it is a short documentary on Hamlet, resistance, and who owns the stories at the heart of our culture. A look at why Hamlet, a play that's over 400 years old, holds up a mirror to society today. Filmed across 4 days of workshops with youth theater groups across London. And to quote Riz Ahmed from within this documentary, something he says in this doc short is, Hamlet is about someone who is grieving the illusion that the world is a fair place. And that's the thing that sticks with me the most. He elaborates, Hamlet thought that the world was kind of fucked up, but not that fucked up. He's like, are you kidding me? They're doing that blatantly now? And then the editing cuts to police pulling people out of car windows. So he's really is grounding. He's saying this is a timeless tale. And it's interesting. He's approaching it from that angle.
This is what I was saying before, and I hadn't really picked up on the deeper intentionality here. I heard a little bit of this in the interview that I heard with him, but it didn't go very far into this. But it's pretty clear in this movie that there is a critique of modern society in the center of this interpretation, and why my vigorous defense isn't the right way I want to say this. My vigorous praise for this movie is in that it does it has an interpretation and it stands on that interpretation. It doesn't back away from the interpretation. Oh, we kind of saw this and we're kind of putting it out there. They're like, no, we're talking about something here and we're putting it forward in this vehicle with this impromptu around it. And that's what we're saying. And if you don't like it, fair, but that's what we're saying. So that's really interesting that this is even deeper at the heart of this than I was personally aware of.
Yeah. And he does question it. He says, is it actually subversive and contemporary and relevant to take Shakespeare's Hamlet and put it in a contemporary British Asian setting? Or is it, in a way, giving the dinosaur a blood transfusion? What do you think?
Yeah, well, and that's what I was saying as well before, that I really hope that this creates some velocity around taking Shakespeare. God, this is so interesting. Bait and this are so in conversation with each other. But taking this, this
icon,
this icon, this pillar of Western civilization, and going, no, it doesn't. Yeah, that's his home. England was his home, and the cultural and historical aspect of where he came from. But the reason
Denmark, actually, yeah.
Well, I meant Shakespeare, not Hamlet per se. The reason that Shakespeare is potent is because he's speaking to universal human truths.
Yeah.
That exist beyond culture and time that we can still examine. So no, Shakespeare doesn't. London belongs to England, but it is an international city. New York, LA, Paris, Jakarta, a lot of these big mega cities. Yeah, they're hosted by a country, but they kind of rise above their host country, and they belong more in a global sense than they do to their home country. And I think Shakespeare occupies that same kind of space, that if we limit him to Western European culture, we actually do damage to what Shakespeare is actually saying to us.
Why limit? Why limit him? Why? And just as we should be interested in stories that were born of other continents. Look at for.
And we just don't have enough cultural flow back around.
Sure,
why don't we have the Ramayana? Why don't we have the Mahabharata? I don't even know what stories we would pull from China or Japan. Shogun, but that's a Western man's telling a version. So
look at we have taken a lot of the tales from 1001 Nights, Arabian Nights, that sort of thing.
Very good point. Very good point. That's. Or Tolkien, right? Okay, take another, scion of Western European culture. Tolkien speaks beyond culture as well, right? So Or
Yeah.
Star Wars speaks beyond culture.
Yeah. I mean, we should like yeah. There's the Arabic language is such a poetic one. And obviously I think Urdu it's the same. The Indian subcontinent, these are all hotbeds of storytelling that indeed we know some, but we should know more.
Yeah. Well, it'd be great to know more if we just had, if the cultural winds were blowing around. I can go and get ramen. I can go and get, quote unquote, Americanized Chinese food, right? I can go get Indian food. I can go to these restaurants and I can experience.
Go to Brick Lane. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can experience food. Why can't I experience story?
Yeah. 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 And hopefully, like this provides a bridge between those two sides because it does, as we say, silently in this case. And I would love to see an adaptation that just drops the pretenses of Shakespeare text and just uses a story structure to, with
the plot points, the beats, right?
Yeah. Before we stop talking about Riz Ahmed, I do want to just quickly acknowledge that it was pointed out, I didn't even know about this, that there's the new Harry Potter audiobook coming out. Riz Ahmed is one of 200 actors. Damn, there are a lot of characters in that who are participating, and a lot of people are quite upset about it because of, I'll say openly, I support trans rights. I don't think that's political. I don't care if you give me a 1-star review because I care about people.
Trans rights are human rights, right?
Yeah. And I do think that Riz Ahmed, I think people were disappointed in his participating because he is typically someone who is an activist who is very empathetic and caring. And a lot of actors are at this moment, for a couple of different reasons, being asked to, why are you doing this thing that puts money in the pocket of anti-trans organizations? Right. And he has not responded. So I am disappointed that he hasn't responded. Some people have responded poorly. Some people have responded well. And as far as I know, he has not responded at all. So just putting that out there. Riz Ahmed, if you're ever listening to this, big fan of yours, come out and say something in support of trans people.
So weird because there's a whole bait angle here as well, right? There's a whole thing. Like, how do you respond to this stuff like this?
Yeah. Oh my God, that whole plot. What? About something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, that's a sticky. I mean, it's not a sticky wicket. It's very clear in some regards, but then in other regards, Harry Potter is one of those.
I know. My cat was named Hermione. Right. But I just tainted. Anyway,
that's a whole other
cast.
podcast.
Yeah. So Riz Ahmed is not the only person in the cast. We did shout out his mom, Sheba Chadha,
fabulous,
who also is in Bait. Art Malik plays Claudius, the uncle. Vijit Doot plays Hamlet's father as in ghost form. And I'll say the ghost thing's one of the things that worked for me less, but I guess we'll come back to that. And then we had on the we had our white representation, our token whites here. was Polonius was played by Timothy Spall, who again people might know from Harry Potter. He played what's his face, Peter, the one who turns into a mouse. Anyway, a rat. And Joe Alwyn played Laertes, and Morfydd Clark, whom Lorehounds will best know likely as Galadriel.
Right, from Rings of Power.
Right, or from horror movies like Saint Maud. She played Ophelia. So it did add this, this white family being the sort of the advisors and children, added some more complications that, you can't, again, call out in the text because they're using Shakespeare's text, but it's there. It's apparent.
Right.
What did you think?
Will say that Timothy Spall was great. He reminded me of a kind of a worm tongue like character, the advisor to the king.
Yeah, exactly.
Who has his own motivations and own, that supersede the king's and it's manipulative and parasitical, while at the same time having sort of two great kids, and obviously Morfydd Clark as Ophelia was really lovely, but she wasn't just this flat love interest. it seemed to me that she was, because there was some of the Horatio embedded in her as well, that she was she was confidant.
the confidant.
Yeah, and advisor, and not only connected just through family because of her father, but because of she brought something to that dynamic political, to the political dynamic of her own. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. So, and she's great. I just think she's a fabulous actor as well. So I hadn't seen Joe Alwyn before, but
he was in Hamlet, for example. He played Agnes's brother in Hamlet.
Okay. He did seem a little familiar, but I couldn't place him. So he's
he's definitely an up and coming actor that you'll be seeing more of. I thought it was interesting about Laertes here is that he did, especially since there wasn't Rosencrantz and Guildenstern or Horatio or whatever, Laertes, you had the feeling, was the old friend who's trying to comfort,
take him out of his grief.
Yeah, comfort his friend whose dad has just died, but Hamlet keeps pushing him away until ultimately, and then once Hamlet kills his father, things get a little tense.
Yes. And there was a great scene when when Laertes takes him to the club after all of the funeral stuff, and there's like a little scene of him giving him a little bump of cocaine on the web of his thumb, between his thumb and his forefinger, and I was like, that is just so real and grounded. And he's not only trying to pat him on the back and say, "Buck up, buddy," and it's all going to be okay, but taking him out for a night on town. Come on, let's do our old routines and let loose. It just worked so well, so that then when their conflict starts to brew and he starts to do the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern thing, like, hey, were you sent for? Are you being propped up by the king and queen to make me feel differently than I am? And then obviously with Polonius and then his sister and then Ophelia, it just builds and builds and builds the tension between them so well. But then my brain was expecting, well, how are they going to do a fight? And then they didn't. They just, and it was like, whoa.
Just a poison drink. Yeah.
And then that he pours it on. Yeah. Like that was like, wow. Like I don't know how I feel about that. I'm still processing it,
I mean, of course, it would have been weird if they started fencing, giving
exactly right.
Setting. Like that's not a thing we do. I always found it so with these previous Hamlets. This is why I'm so glad that we watched the previous Hamlets to sort of set the context for us. One thing that I've been noticing is how Gertrude is portrayed, the queen is portrayed differently across them. And in particular, how she is portrayed, and she ends up dead at the end, and in most cases, in most versions, in the original version, obviously, because she drinks the poison. And some of the stagings make it clear that she knows she's drinking the poison and she's doing it for a reason. And
for
then
her own guilt and angst
right, and to save and warn her son about what's happening and everything. And this one goes in that direction where she just drinks right out of the bottle. Whereas others, I prefer that, where she makes the choice herself rather than she's just like, oopsies, drank out of the wrong cup,
Right.
And this is definitely the case where she sees what's happening. She realizes her son just drank poison and she just starts slopping it out of the bottle. Like, well, then F y'all.
Yeah. It's wild. It is an absolute wild.
Yeah, and then Hamlet basically waterboards Laertes, and that's how he gets the poison. Like, well, I guess that works. And then he does actually stab his uncle.
Right.
Who, by the way, his uncle Claudius, I feel like he had a smaller role in this, but I guess it's because of that lack of seeing things from his perspective at all.
Yeah, I thought he was distant. He was regal. He was not at all sympathetic. And I thought the portrayal was good. I felt that it set the conflict between Hamlet and his uncle very clearly. And it made the stakes very clear as well. I'm taking control. When we're in the play, Denmark as a kingdom and as an important regional power is kind of lost because we're so insular, we're so inside of this thing. But this allows us to see how impactful, what's the name of the the castle, Elysia, as a corporation is on the world. Because when we go out in the world, we see the company brand logo on buildings, on places, that it's a big deal. They're in the news. So we really I got a real sense of the power that this family has, and the fact that the uncle did this is even more of a sin than I've ever felt before. Right? Like I really got that connectivity, like how pissed off Hamlet is at his uncle. And what a shitty thing his uncle did, regardless of the fact that this whole thing is a corrupt enterprise, right? Like this whole business is a corrupt enterprise. So,
yeah. I mean, and in terms of that setting up the motives better, I love the play aspect, the play within the play of it.
Yeah.
That's another one that I like to pay attention to how it's handled in the various interpretations, because it's really a great opportunity for that director to bring their own, their own vision into play. And here there was no words spoken. It was more of a dance performance. And so we're keeping with the Southeast Asian culture, of course. Right. But the huge difference with that is here, rather than just reenacting the style of the murder, the players straight out point right at the king, just openly accusing him. So in a way, like that's a huge breaking of the play, as you say. But on the other hand, does it make the uncle's reaction running out of the room more believable?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the pulse of the beat, the flashing of the lighting, the movements of the dancers. I just thought that the idea of setting it in this traditional style of dance play storytelling, right? The whatever form, I don't know. I don't know the correct form to explain this. Yeah, I just don't have the understanding. But it's storytelling, right? It's a play, but it's set with music and dance.
No, it's a great visual, interlude. Yeah,
just so potent. And then the whole weirdness of Ahmed's character putting on the shawl and the lipstick and the microphone ahead of time. Oh my God, it's just stunning. And so he's really driving. Hamlet is just really twisting his uncle further and further. So that whole prelude to the dance play has everybody unnerved. And then when that guy points at him, it's like this palpable impact of, son of a bitch, I got you. And the uncle feels it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
I'm reliving the movie right now in my head right now. So.
Well, as I was saying, I thought that they set his grief in the beginning very well, but then they do also, I think this is one of the best descents into madness that I've seen, because he doesn't go immediately hysterical, Brenna. But there's just this uncomfortable sort of calm intensity that slowly builds into more and more erratic behavior, like what you're describing. And we see how he's like, particularly in that scene and the way he behaves towards his mother and Ophelia, we see how he's alienating the people left who love him. And you can see how he's to that point where they change slightly how he kills Polonius after this, but he's reached this point of hysteria, and Polonius is just trying to calm him down, but comes from behind, and he has a knife because he was thinking about going after his uncle, and so he just stabs behind him, thinking it's his uncle, I assume. And that's how he kills Polonius. And it's like, a lot of this, it's like they've really thought about how do we reconcile these horrible things with a central character that people need to be able to
be empathetic towards, right? Our protagonist, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that we don't learn Hamlet's lessons unless we can identify with him in some way.
Right. That's a really good insight. It's a really good insight.
And I thought one of the highlights of that descent into madness was the to be or not to be speech, where in this case, he's talking to himself while driving a car and letting go of the wheel of the car. So you really feel like this is a guy who's questioning, like, do I even care if I live or die?
Mm-hmm. I think this is the part that I had the hardest time with, but this is the hardest speech to pull off for any production because it is one of the most well-known, right? So again, I think I was processing how am I approaching this and what I'm used to. And when we got into it, I wasn't sure how I felt. So I really need to watch this a couple more times to see how Ahmed is centering this and placing this particular speech for his character. It was too much for me to process in the moment.
Yeah, fair. What were some other high or low lights for you?
The biggest low light for me was too much floaty cam. I was getting motion sick.
The shaky cam was out of control.
It was out of control. And it really, I thought, distracted. The shaky cam, in my opinion, can be such a potent and effective tool, but you need to use it sparingly. If you overspice your food, too much salt, right? And you can kill a dish, but not enough salt and you don't have enough, flavor. So for me, it was just over the top, too much. I really wish they had dialed that back. The other thing, maybe on a second watch, and I think maybe on a larger screen, I was watching it in bed on a laptop. And so maybe the small screen with the shaky cam was, maybe that was an effect that was occurring. So maybe when it comes out officially and I can watch it on streaming on my normal TV, I'll see how I feel about it. It's interesting that you pointed out the long stretches of silence. I think that was another thing that I was bumping against because I was waiting for the Brana staccato, and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? Like, is there a pacing problem? And I hate using pacing as a critique because it just gets overused. There are times when pacing needs to be appropriately critiqued, but it's like a go-to for a lot of, people in our business who critique. So say, oh, the pacing was bad. I never got in sync with the movie, but again, I think that had to do with the fact that I was processing the differences. But I think other than that, I don't have a lot of critiques. So yeah, I think it's just the floaty camera. I think it was too much. What about you?
I mean, I did like the pacing. As I said, I like that they added these silent moments. And I thought that it was...
I want to like that.
Yeah.
But let me say
that's fair.
aspirational.
I think that they replaced, as you put that, Brana staccato speech with, there's a sort of droning, throbbing score going underneath it that I think was that sort of driving intensity without making Hamlet too chatty, since we only saw it from his perspective. I also noticed, I was wondering what you thought about, so we talked about the shaky cam, I agree, too much. But it had this grainy filmic texture and had this sort of like, I called it Gen X dim lighting.
It was very dim.
But then in 2020's high definition. So what do you think about the mood that created? Did that work for you?
It's interesting because I'm gonna pull up a comp that maybe is not expected necessarily, and that's the new Star Wars Maul animated feature that we're just starting to cover. And the animation in that does this watercolor sketch art like animation where there's a lot of painted textures, and apparently they use a lot of actual real world techniques. They filmed painting on glass and stuff like that. And Aaron Kay, one of our affiliate hosts over at Radioactive Ramblings, said, it's interesting because he's grown up with the Star Wars animated as a Gen Z. I had to remember which the lower what the next ones are appropriate called. And he said, he's grown up with it and he feels that the animation styles that he's been watching over the years are growing and maturing from that really clean, but goofy computer animation from like the original, was it original Clone Wars? The one with the Dooku and the guy flying around with Dooku and the guy flying around.
Yeah.
It just really like, oh boy, to now being very sophisticated and very mature.
The first animation from the Clone Wars is rough.
Way rough. But here we are. And so I feel like with the HD cams, we lose that. It's too clean sometimes. I remember in watching, what was the horror movie that was up for Oscars? Weapons. It's that HD can cleanness, especially the night shots, right? There's no grain because they've dialed the ISO up. It's clean. And that has a look and that has a feeling. And so then you add grain back artificially to create texture, to create a sense of something. I think it's a little too dark, but I think the grain works because if you're using HD cameras, it can look weird. It looks hyper real. And I think the grain gives it that crime boss, that sort of mobster feel to it.
In the Oscars series for this year, in the episode where we're talking about cinematography, Dakota Arsenault, my guest for that, who works in the film industry himself, we were talking about. I was asking him, why does he think that there's so much 35 millimeter film being used now? So many references to classic films like The French Connection.
Right.
And, he was pointing out.
What was the technique that One Battle After Another used? And some other movies are using it. VistaVision is a big thing. And
he was saying, that he was pointing out that a lot of these filmmakers, these 70s films are the ones that they grew up on. So that's why they're recreating this textured visual imagery.
Right. That makes sense. But then what is the texture? What is the medium? What does the texture of the medium impart to us that we're missing, that we're trying to bring back? That's, interesting.
A feeling of authenticity, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas a clean digital signal is hyper real. So we lose something there.
Yeah. For me, the one thing that was could have used a little more something was the whole ghost in the roof sequence. It was just like, that's just a dude standing on a roof. Like, you can do something. That for me was the weakest part, just a bit underproduced. And I have medium feelings about one other thing I always notice is like, how do you handle the get thee to a nunnery scene, which is one of the most misogynistic lines in this or maybe any Shakespeare. And I've seen like some just showing it as Hamlet being particularly cruel, which fine. I've seen like Ophelia, that one, because they could add extra context. They added lower whispers between them where they were actually plotting, where he's like, listen, I know this, get thee to a nunnery, performing for the spires, but them to her, like, there's people there who will help you. And here it just sort of like he uses as like a throwaway line, like, just get out of here, forget about it, get thee to a nunnery.
That's interesting. That's good. Yeah.
And then the thing that I think was really interesting, and I think I ultimately really like it, but I'm still sorting through what it means, and I might be missing some full contextual basis for this, is the end, where not the end, but the almost end, where Hamlet, he's not sent away as in the play. He's supposed to be sent off to England, and then he's going to be killed there, but then he finds out, so he gets off the boat. But here instead, it looks like he's being sent away to protect him because he's just killed Polonius.
Right. It's a way to hide the crime.
But actually, he's at, of course, his uncle's command. He's being taken to a vacant lot to be beaten and his wrists slit until others come to Hamlet's aid and then take him into their own, they're like, oh, well, come with us. And they take him into this tent city in the sewers. So there's no cemetery here. Instead, they go to this tent city in the sewers, which reminds me of, there's this 2000 documentary called Dark Days by Mark Singer, which is about people who were living in the 90s in the vacant train areas below New York City. And I think about it all the time. And this made me think so much about that. But I just find it fascinating that they plunge into this underground world. And it's, as Riz Ahmed is saying in that documentary short I was talking about, that this is a play that's in and of itself, it really only focuses on nobility, but he believes that it actually is saying things that are relevant to all classes. And so I take this part to be exploring that, but I'm still not sure where I land on it. What are your thoughts on that sequence?
That they collapse Fortinbras into this social movement, sort of a No Kings or what was the 2011 stuff? What do we call that?
The Wall Street.
The Wall Street stuff. I think it's interesting, and I think I'm with you that I'm still processing that. I think I need to watch that stuff again to understand how I want to contextualize it, because it is a key aspect of Hamlet's heel turn, face turn. I don't know, like he's a bad guy already, kind of, in a way, that he sees the impact of what Elsinore is doing in the world.
Yeah.
Right. He gets in touch with the what extractive capitalism does to society. And so how does that affect his behaviors and his actions? He almost just got whacked by his family, so he's pissed off about that. And then he realizes that they're the bad guys, right? Oh, are we the bad guys? And so I'm still processing it. I don't know how to square the circle here.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that if you see this film as well. We do have a chat set up for it in on the Discord. A question for you: if you made your own Franken Hamlet, if you
good job, well played.
If you took elements of Hamlet adaptations you've seen or questions that you wish were explored more, what might your Hamlet look like as an outline or a sketch?
That's an interesting question, and I hadn't thought about that ahead of time. So I think, and I mentioned this before, like there's a couple things I like that Brana did, which is seeing the political machinery that's in operation around the world. So Norwegian troops are crossing Denmark to go fight in Poland, and then they come back and complete their. So what is power? What are the machinery of power? What are, and politics having to do to drive, to pressurize the Danish royal family? The relationship between Ophelia and Hamlet, I always felt in the traditional plays that him kind of driving her mad fell short because I never saw enough of their relationship to understand how important their relationship was to each other. And so I like this version where he's like, blah, 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 but get away because there's bad people here, but blah, 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 right? I really liked that. But I also liked that Brana showed us this intimate relationship, that they were very in love with each other and were seeing each other quite in all of their body. So I don't know. I'm being weird about how to explain that they were doing it. So I really like that. I do miss Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because they stick out like sore thumbs. Both from so Hamlet's just like, you guys, come on, you're trying to bullshitter here. But I also miss the comedy. So there is a comedy in the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, to having Roth and what's his name? Anyway, that guy, having them involved in some way.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, Gary Oldman. Thank you. So yeah, I kind of miss that element. I don't miss I really enjoy the Zeffirelli and the Gibson performance, but I don't miss the elements of that. But I do like the Olivier mysterious, the halls of his mind are these sort of this mad funhouse mirror kind of place. So I really like that. And I liked the voiceover monologues at times where you could really play with that in a modern version. So a character is like looking at somebody and having thoughts about them without speaking them. So yeah, I don't know. I would sprinkle a little bit. I don't know if that makes a coherent film or not. But that's,
no. I mean, I think that is, at this point, I want to see something different. So I think I would start with that Ophelia adaptation, which I think you might enjoy. It's far from perfect film, but I do like that it shows things more from the female perspective. So obviously I'm a bit partial to it, but it does have that more explaining the motivations between like the play behind the play of like how Hamlet's acting mad for others, but what's really at the core of it. And I would definitely take the editing and such from the Olivier one. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I love the grounded staging of the Andrew Scott one from 2018. And I don't know which acting I like better. Like the Olivier version has the best version I think I've seen of the classical style Shakespearean acting.
Right.
And the version with Andrew Scott as Hamlet, that is a very modern take. And that is the first one where I really felt like, oh, he was really friends with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So I felt that betrayal on both of their parts.
Interesting. Yeah, because we don't often get the fact that they actually were, they were school friends, right? They were chums. They were.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Because it goes straight into the conflict with them.
Yeah. But I think what I would take from this adaptation is just the liberty to break things a bit, as you say, but also just to make it specific and from a different perspective than the Danish prince,
Mm-hmm.
I like that about this. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that was fun. This was a fun little side project. Unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we have educated ourselves a bit better about Hamlet in general.
Indeed, it's true.
And Riz Ahmed's career.
Cool. I guess we can sort of wrap things up. I wanted to throw out a couple of quick reminders for folks. We have, if you're a member of the Discord, if not, why aren't you? Well, I get it. So don't worry about it if you're not. It's a hard space. Social spaces are.
It's free, of course. Just put it out there
free.
In case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, it's a great place to hang out with other like-minded folk and talk about everything from Hamlet to Star Wars. And we have a new server tag. So if you want to wear sort of a little lapel pin, if you're on other places in Discord, you can get a server tag, a Lorehounds server tag for free. You just have to go up to the top of the screen and click open the little menu at the top that says Lorehounds, and there's a little thing that says tag, and you can add a little flair to your username. Also wanted to shout out, we do have a new podcast called Into the West, and that is two of our community members, Red Zippy and Brian 8063. They're both big film nerds, and we're kind of in this phase where a generation of of actors and other filmmakers and producers are passing into the West. And so this is sort of our funeral dirge for them at that show. And we're actually closing the voting for the Gene Hackman movie that we're going to review on the next version of that. So hop into the Discord, or maybe we'll put a link in the show notes for the thing. But I think, the poll closes tomorrow relative to when we're recording, or actually tonight, relative to when we're recording. I forgot.
Oh, okay. So
anyway, just flagging it for future.
So it'll be in the past, yeah, but there'll be more.
Exactly. There'll be more. And I think we're doing Catherine Hahn next is our next one.
Okay.
Our next conversation we're going to be having a conversation about Catherine Hahn and her life and her legacy. How about if I not objectify her in that way? And then the last thing I would want to flag is the show tracker. If you've not checked out the show tracker yet, go to our Linktree or pop onto the Discord. It's a free resource for everyone to check. It's a curated list of movies and television shows, so you can see what's coming on. It's sort of organized by quarter, but we also have a Gantt chart view, which is like a timeline thing, so you can see what shows are overlapping and stuff. So definitely check those resources out. What else do we got going on the feed these days, Elysia?
Well, you guys you didn't say the pit yet, right? You're doing weekly coverage of the pit.
Yeah, we're almost done.
And just started weekly coverage of Maul Shadow Lord, for
Very
which
cool.
I am I am, submitting comlink messages for.
Yes.
with lore bombs.
And I think we're going to record our first episodes for that tonight. So that should be out already.
That should be out before this. I think coming out probably right after this is the wrap up of season 2 of the live action One Piece with John and I.
Very fun.
And also right after this is the Daredevil Born Again season 2 mid-season check-in with Jean-Luc and I.
Seems like Disney's getting real dark because it's everything that I see in the Discord chatter is that Daredevil is pretty grim this season. Is that accurate?
I mean, it's always been dark. They knew that when they took it on.
Fair.
But the showrunners there is a police force that is taking prisoners with asking not enough questions. And a lot of people are asking the showrunners and writers if they meant it to be very on point. And they're like, no, of course not. But everyone's like, sure you didn't. sure you didn't. But to be fair, this stuff comes right from the comics, comes right from, say, 1984. So we've been telling these stories for a very long time, sadly. Yeah, and then of course, Supercast and Patreon. It's my month, so the poll is still open. I think it'll be ending just after this or just before. I'm not sure, but it was it's the Rob Reiner Requiem, and it was looking tight between When Harry Met Sally and Misery, although North is surprisingly hanging in there. We can make North happen. Make Bruce Willis in a pink bunny suit happen. And there's going to be, Lisa and I are going to do a What You Watchin' next week for subscribers about the new film, The Drama, which I have seen once so far, and it's become one of my favorite films of the year, although I say content warning going in.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I want you to know that it might upset some of you. Very dark humor, but it's a film about questioning what is the worst thing, what is worse than another, and what does radical forgiveness look like, and when is it applicable?
Oh, it sounds like John and I need to both see that movie because we talk often about forgiveness and apology. It seems to be a theme that's in the zeitgeist right now. So that sounds good. Gonna try to check it out. Also, we have our affiliates, Properly Howard. They're doing their newlywed season. It was a fun game about which films Steve and Anthony hadn't seen and predicting if the person would like it or not. They just dropped Late Night with the Devil, and up next is Clue.
I love both those films.
Yeah. And then Radioactive Ramblers are covering Invincible, and The Boys is coming back for the 5th and final season. And so they're going to be doing I'm assuming full-time coverage of that. I haven't checked in with them. And Nevermind the Music, Nicole and Mark, who talk about psychology and music. Their episode just dropped on Fleetwood Mac and the grieving process. I started listening to that. Man, it is a good episode. And hearing Mark nerd out about Fleetwood Mac musically and song construction. But then for the song that they're covering and having Nicole talking about the processes of grieving and breaking up, it's like a sweet spot. It's a Nevermind the Music sweet spot.
And shall we shout out our thank yous? Do you want to thank the Discord server boosters?
Sure. Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Doof71, Athena Ajalea, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Perdition, Radioactive Richard, and Adrian. They'll donate a little bit of extra to the server so that we get to have fun things like Flare and server tags and things like that. And since Discord is our sort of main water cooler for the community, we really appreciate them, making the server a bit better and more fun of a place.
Yeah, and you'll find in the link tree in the show notes links to all of the affiliates that David just talked about and more, including my own Will Shift Dust and the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, but also to the Supercast and Patreon, where you'll get ad-free access to episodes like this, plus all those extra episodes we've been talking about. So we have to shout out our thank yous to our subscribers in general, because, you know, you genuinely make it possible for us to keep doing this. Obviously, we'd love to be able to focus even more on this. If you want to tell your friends, but our greatest thank yous always go, of course, to the highest tier, the Lore Masters: Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, SC, Peter OH, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Nathan T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dali V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Lestu, Jeffrey B, Elysia U, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, Julia F, Collie S, Ilmariel, Rocky Zim, Jessica A, Red Zippy, the TCS, Dopamini, Catch It, Eleanor, Mrs. Tennant, AC Wilson, Eli W, Cassie K, Chumbaruni, Katia, Josh Liu, Paintin PDX, Corey G, Quinch, and always last, Adrienne.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Elysia, for organizing this. It was fun, a fun little project to cover with you. I'm glad we were both into the movie.
Yeah, thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I got a few more things to throw into my someday I'll watch it list of movies. So
the watch list grows
forever. That is a constant. There's a couple of constants in the world, and that is certainly one of them. All right, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.